The United States President Joe Biden is holding a summit with the world leaders across the globe to discuss what they call democracy and the human rights. In this video, we simply want to critique or to understand what is the American democracy. I am Ngabuto Nicholas Mapena. Please like the video, subscribe, circulate, write your comments. Let's discuss the American democracy versus our own democracy as we understand it. The United States democracy is based on protecting its economic interests across the globe. This is why the United States of America has been involved in foreign wars ever since. Its military is deployed across the globe. But there's no war on American soil. It fights wars in other countries in the name of democracy and the protecting human rights. But we know that it is the United States that is using torture in Guantanamo Bay, just outside Cuba, to torture those that it does not agree with. We know that it is the United States of America that bombed Libya with its allies. In Syria, it did the same. In Vietnam in the 70s, it did the same. Its democracy comes through bombs which are thrown through their military planes. So in essence, the American democracy is about protecting its global economic interests. It has got nothing to do with protecting the interests of the working class, but it is about protecting its economic interests. In the Zimbabwean context, the United States celebrated the election of Robert Mugabe. One of their diplomats, Andrew Young, said, and I quote, "The victory of Robert Mugabe is a victory for Western diplomacy as it has stopped the Soviet advance through Africa, represented in Zimbabwe by Joshua Nkomo." Quote. That's the American democracy. We understand democracy as meaning that workers at the workplace must have a right to decide on how to produce goods, how those goods produced at the workplace should be marketed, and why in the first place those goods must be produced. Because goods are produced based on the needs of society, not based on profits. But the American democracy, it's about exploitation. While in the making of a medical colonialism, where the United States of America and its allies are forcing us to take their vaccines. And we are not saying we should not get vaccines as we fight this pandemic. But as President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa has correctly observed, that the United States and her allies will not want Africa to produce its own vaccines. They will not want Cuba to produce its own vaccines. They want themselves to produce vaccines to advance their own interests. I was watching a video on what is happening in Uganda, where they are sending in Uganda and the rest of Africa substandard medicines, which has caused massive pain and suffering to the people of Africa, to the people of South America. So American democracy is not about the majority of the people in a given country to have a right to elect their representatives. American democracy is about regime change agenda to install a puppet government that will advance or protect its economic interests. It does not care what civilians in any given country think or want. It every year invite young people to its capital, Washington, to indoctrinate them so that when they go back to their countries, they advance the American dream in the name of democracy and the human rights abuse. So we cannot talk of democracy when the commanding heights of the economy have not been transformed. The economy must be transformed. Our society must be transformed. The economy must serve the interests of the majority. In other words, the economy of a country must be placed in the hands of the majority of the people as a whole, or must be placed in the hands of society as a whole, because the majority of the people must benefit to the economy. So there's no democracy without the people participating in the economy of their country. We cannot talk of democracy when puppet governments are installed who then become conduit of exploitation of our mineral resources. That cannot be democracy. So democracy cannot be defined through the lenses of the Americans who view democracy as a tool to protect their economic interests. They've been involved in Iraq, in the genocide in Iraq. George W. Bush and his counterpart, Tony Blair, they are still walking scot-free, notwithstanding what they did to the people of Iraq. And we are told that is democracy. When NATO bombed Libya, we are told that is American democracy or Western democracy. It cannot be. So when Joe Biden and his friends and the rest of their puppets that they invite to participate in a summit about democracy and human rights, they are not sincere. They do not love us. They do not want us as Africans to take charge of our own destiny. They want to force their medicines to us. They want to force their vaccines to us. They want to force their products to us. They want to continue to exploit our minerals. And we must reject that. And the only way to reject that is to build progressive civil society movements across the continent, is to strengthen Africa Left, is to build a progressive Africa Left that will advance the interests of the working class and peasants in our continent. And this can be done through the establishment of communist parties across the continent. As communists were guided by what we call democratic centralism, we understand the concept of democracy, that production is based on the needs of society as a whole, not based on maximum profits. That's how we understand democracy. This is why in socialist countries, like in Cuba, people do not go to bed on empty stomachs. the political leadership live a modest lifestyle. In capitalist countries, particularly in the West, inequality is growing. Under this pandemic, when working class lost their savings, when working class are poor across the globe, multinational companies made billions and they will continue to make billions. If you simply look into the global rich list, you will see that few individuals have made billions. How do you explain that under a pandemic, as we're battling this pandemic, today we have individuals who are said to be worth over 100 billion US dollars? When all of us who have become poorer as we are kept in our homes because of this pandemic. So the American democracy does not advance our interests. American democrats advance the economic interests of the United States of America. And the United States of America is busy mobilizing young people in Africa, in Latin America, to be the tools that they use for regime change agenda. And we must reject that. We have defined our own struggle in Zimbabwe as a struggle against imperialism, struggle against the looting class. Rejecting the American democracy does not mean we embrace the looters. No. We stand opposed to ZANU-PF that is looting our resources. We stand opposed to stooges of imperialists in our country and in the rest of the continent. And it is our revolutionary duty as communists that we reject stooges of imperialist forces, that we reject looters of our economy. We have contributed to the collapse of our own economy, resulting in millions of young people in leaving their countries in search for jobs in South Africa, in search for jobs in Europe, where they drown in the seas trying to get to Europe. This is happening because we are not in control of our own economy. So if we were to build a democratic Africa, if we were to build democratic states in our continent, in Latin America, in the Middle East, is that the economy must be placed in the hands of society as a whole. That's when we can celebrate that indeed we celebrate democracy. But we cannot celebrate democracy when we have no right to elect our own political representatives. Kwame Nkrumah taught us that post-liberation or post-colonial state has become what is characterized as neo-colonialism. And we are in the middle of vaccine imperialism. Some of us, we took Pfizer jab, were told we have to get the third one, and it is not manufactured in Africa. And we ask, don't we have scientists in the African continent who can manufacture our own vaccine to fight this pandemic? Don't we have our own scientists in Africa who can manufacture our own medicines to fight malaria? Don't we have our own scientists in Africa who can manufacture our own condoms in Africa? Why should we be getting condoms coming from the West when we have our own scientists in Africa? Why should women in Africa continue to use contraceptives coming from the West? Don't we have our own scientists in our continent who can produce that? Many babies are born deformed because our women are given substandard contraceptives pills, because the Western imperialists always want to experiment with us as Africans. And we have said previously, and we continue to say so, that they do not love us. It's a pity that we have amongst ourselves as Africans those that admire what they call American democracy. American democracy, as I conclude, it's about protecting its own economic global interests. It has got nothing to do with ensuring that we have a right to participate in the mainstream economy, to ensure that we elect our own political leadership freely. This is why they use the World Bank and the IMF to impose economic structural adjustment programs in Africa and in Latin America. So as communists, we reject the American democracy. We have our own democracy as the working class and the peasants. Thank you so much. Please like the video. Let's hear your comments. Bye-bye.